certainly for us in Connecticut, but I think nationally, governance is of prime importance. Now, what does that mean in real terms? It means you have to be able to explain what you're doing and why to Mr. and Mrs. consumers sitting at home, who, all the most they know about the technology is that the cable company doesn't work for them.
Right.
You've got to be able to share that. At a certain point, the high-level descriptions, that this is what we're doing, that really won't cut it with them.
Right.
What people need to understand is, okay, this is how we're doing it.
Right.
This is why we're doing it. And these are the steps that we are taking to ensure that this is fair.
Welcome to 5 Minutes, your quick dive into the wide-ranging world of insurance, technology, and leadership. I'm Miguel Edwards, and I'll be your guide as we explore these topics that are transforming not just the insurance industry, but the business world at large. Along with sharing observations I've made over the span of my career in insurance, technology, and operations, I'll be chatting with some of the brightest minds in business and leadership. Whether you're a seasoned executive or a rising star, an industry expert, or just curious about how technology is revolutionizing insurance, this is your perfect spot for your weekly dose of insights. This is 5 Minutes.
Commissioner Andrew Mais, thanks so much for taking some time out of your day. I know it's been a long day. It's getting toward the end, so I really appreciate the time.
Well, thank you for having me. Always happy to be here. Always happy to talk.
Fantastic. So just before we get into things, I know you've had an illustrious background and career. Just give us a little bit of some background leading up to your role as commissioner in Connecticut, and we'll see where we go.
It's been quite a career, because one of the things that I've always said, and this is what I told my daughter, this is what I tell all the kids I speak to, never be afraid to try something new.
Yeah.
You got to have fun. So I started off in marketing with defense contractors straight out of school, way back in the days when everything was cost plus and you were a 21-year-old flying first class.
Right.
That was great.
Yeah.
Then I decided I needed a change. I wanted to do a mission. And I became a newspaper reporter when I became business editor, that kind of thing. I had a career that I really enjoyed. Wasn't the most lucrative in the world, so after a while I decided it was time to move on. However, one of the things I started there, I love cars.
Okay.
So I said, we've got, and this was in my hometown in Wilton, we had newspapers all along the Gold Coast. We have a really desirable demographic, some of the most expensive places in the nation.
Yeah.
Why don't we have a car club? And I started that.
All right.
So every week I would get a new car in front of my house, and still my neighbor, former CEO of Lloyd's, America's Hank Watkins. After I got to know him, after I came into insurance, he said, we all used to chat about all these great new cars you get every week. So that was fun.
That's awesome.
Then I went to insurance.
Okay.
Quite by accident. I was looking for a new challenge. And this is part of what I say, again, as I talk to young people, because I think people tend to underestimate the value of insurance and what they can get from an insurance career in every way. And I said to them, nobody grew up wanting to, well, at least I didn't grow up wanting to be
unless you're an actuary.
Exactly. And speaking of that, did you see the Fairfield Little League kids in Connecticut? They won third place in one of the kids in the Little League World Series. And they asked one of the kids what he wanted to
on TV,
be.
I saw it,
and he wanted to be an actuary. It was like, yep, you're from the insurance capital of the world.
That's
kid.
right. That's right.
Yeah. But I went into insurance because a friend of mine who was a fellow Rotarian, and he was the head of he was the Inspector General of the New York Liquidation Bureau.
Okay.
And he said, have you tried this? And I was, had my thoughts. Basically, are you crazy? But I started talking to people, and it turned out, it was really fascinating. Said yes, and I've loved it ever since. It's a fascinating business. You can be anything. I mean, there aren't too many places where you can be anything you want to be.
That's right.
And then you're doing good in the meantime. What more can you ask for?
100%. I don't think a lot of people realize insurance makes the world go round. Like
Absolutely.
it literally would stop without insurance.
I had no boss who used to say insurance is the engine of capitalism.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where we go. So I was with New York for quite a while. Then I went back to the private sector, was with Deloitte in their insurance industry practice for quite a while. And then when this governor won, we were actually in London that night when my governor won. He's now in his second term, coming up to a third. And we were meeting with the British partners and on the way to a meeting in Luxembourg. And I was with a former insurance commissioner from New York, the same guy who hired me,
Okay.
and somebody else who was from the UK. They said, you really should consider this. And I'm like, really? You really? Okay, fine, I'll think about it. And then in Luxembourg, I met 2 former Connecticut commissioners, different political parties, and both of them said the same thing. You really would be great at this.
Wow.
So I said, all right, I'll think about it. And here I am.
There it is.
Yeah.
There is no higher honor. That's awesome. And so when you think about this work as commissioner, what is it that you get the most out of? What do you find the most gratifying in your work?
There is so much that is gratifying. There's so much that is painful. You go through and you look at different product categories. Long-term care. I've got a long-term care policy. I know how much that has gone up. You talk to people who've been through that, and they put all their money in, and they're getting into their 70s and 80s, and they're faced with a huge premium increase.
That's right.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
That's right.
And all you can do is try to tell them, that you had the protection. We'll see what we can do. But then one of the stories I remember, one of the stories I tell that really hit me about insurance was back when I was with Deloitte. And since I had no desire to work in insurance, I was always interested in finding out why people went into insurance. And there was this woman, she was a vice chair, senior insurance leader. She she managed one of our big accounts. And I was asking her, and she told me that when she was a teenager, her father died.
Oh.
And it was his insurance money that put her through school,
Yeah.
that made her the success she is now.
That's right.
And that's what gets to you, realizing the difference you can make.
Amen.
So.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. That makes a ton of sense. So we're here, Commissioner. We're here in Vegas, 2025, at InsurTech Connect, and the talk is obviously much to do about innovation and data and technology and of course artificial intelligence.
Yes.
And so as we think about that and all of the innovation and obviously the need for this industry to innovate, because we are a little bit behind, right? Yes. How do we balance that need, that drive for innovation, the speed with which we need it, and keep in balance the need for our insurance consumer to remain protected?
Okay. Innovation in and of itself is not necessarily good or bad. It's just something that happens.
Right.
The question is, how do we get innovation to benefit consumers? You look at this, you look across the world. I'm vice chair of the executive committee of the International Association of Insurance Supervisors. We discuss the same issue internationally. There is this huge protection gap.
Right.
How do you address that? Innovation in many ways, not just technology, but a significant amount of that will be technology driven.
Right.
But innovation will help people get the products they need as quickly as possible, as easily as possible, as affordably as possible, and those products will be as relevant as possible. Now, doing that, what do you have to do as an insurance commissioner? Because I said, in state insurance commissioner, your North Star is protecting consumers.
Sure.
That's what you got to do.
Right.
Okay. You have to create guardrails, but you have to make sure that those guardrails allow companies to innovate. On the one hand, insurance is a business of trust. On the other hand, innovation in and of itself, you have to accept the possibility of failure.
Yeah, there's some risk
and you've got to make sure that if something goes wrong, consumers are taken care of. You're going to manage it. You're going to get it through. It's on you, and that's the way you do it. But everything we do, when you look at our AI bulletin, for instance, very principles based. And the whole idea is, this is what we want. We want you to be fair. We want you to be ethical. We want you to treat consumers the way you'd want to treat your own mother. And we go from there. And that, I think, allows us the ability to manage what companies do, to manage how consumers are treated, while at the same time encouraging companies to adopt that innovative mindset, encourage companies to move ahead. Just chatting a couple days ago, and I remember, it just sprang to mind. I remember the old days when, and I'm old enough to remember this, Amazon.
Yeah.
Amazon started as just a bookstore, if you remember. And I remember ordering from Amazon early, and you got an Amazon mug. Now look at Amazon. I'm watching Amazon Prime on TV. Thanks to my wife, the truck's there every 15 minutes. But it's amazing what's happened.
That's right.
And part of what's happened there is that more people have access to more products. And they buy more, which is great. But that's what we want to see in insurance too. We want to see people have the ability to get what they need. And innovation, in many ways, that technologically driven innovation will help us get there.
That's interesting. You know, as I think about that drive for innovation, I actually have a colleague of mine. You may know Ron Hamilton. He's a chief compliance officer at BMS Re. But he said something really interesting. We were actually interesting enough at InsurTech Hartford a couple months ago.
As was I, by the way.
Were you?
Yes, I've done InsurTech Hartford. Oh, you! I cannot believe you missed my panel.
I can't believe
I'm leaving.
Forgive me. I'll catch the next one, I promise. But one of the things that Ron said, interestingly enough, in that session, he said that there is actually a role for regulation, and he used it in the context of legal, regulatory, and compliance within an insurance company. But there's a role for regulation to drive innovation,
yes.
right? And so talk to me a little bit about that from your perspective as a commissioner.
You know, because what happens? Okay, we've got take a look at the system that we have in the U.S.
Right.
And I'm just going to focus on the U.S. in particular because that's what I'm concerned with.
Sure.
We have a society that many regard as highly litigious. Mm-hmm. Okay. If you were a company and you were making a profit comfortably with your existing or even a slightly shrinking customer base, mm-hmm. why would you want to go out and try something new knowing it could bring your company down?
Sure.
That's where regulators come in. We exist to make sure, on the one hand, every products are fully burdened, so mm-hmm. any risks are included. But we also exist to provide that sense of safety. Mm-hmm. And it's not just to consumers. Consumers may be the one that, in the end, we really want to make sure are safe. But we also have to ensure that industry understands.
That's right.
That we know they need to innovate. We know that at points, as I said, things may go wrong.
Sure.
But if it's done and with the best of intentions, and mm-hmm. if everything was done right, we're going to be here. We're going to work with you on that.
Yeah.
And that provides a sense of safety. We've seen this industry, and we've done at the NAIC, we've done numerous studies. This industry is certainly has not been an early adopter, and not even a fast follower.
Sure.
With AI. We need to change that.
Right.
We need to drive that, and we need to make sure that the industry is using the tools that are available.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I have to wonder. I mean, I've been in the industry for 25 years, and mostly in a technology capacity. And I would offer that I don't know that I've ever seen kind of the rate of adoption as aggressive as it is now. Mm-hmm. I feel renewed actually in the past couple of years. Is that a function of just where technology is, or is also because by the way, I remember that there was always this hesitation around, well, what are the regulators going to mm-hmm. say if we do this? Is there a kind of a multi-pronged thing going on where technology availability and also regulatory support is kind of coming together?
Yeah, I'd say there are two things there.
Okay.
On the one hand, there's a fear of messing up. Okay. As Mark Zuckerberg said, you'd rather invest or waste $100 billion on pursuing AI than get left behind. Mm-hmm. We can't afford to get left behind. We are willing to make that investment. This industry is willing to make that investment, which is good.
Yeah.
On the other hand, and this is a positive side effect of what we as regulators have been doing, when we started off, and this was, 3-4 years ago, when mm-hmm. current NAIC president started working on the cyber principles, John Gottfried started working mm-hmm. on the cyber principles, and then we moved to the AI principles, and former Maryland Commissioner Kathleen, and I'm blanking on Kathleen Bourrain.
There you go.
Yeah, and she took over when we established at the NAIC the first new letter committee. And if you know the NAIC, it's been around for 157 mm-hmm. years. There's some things we do one way. We're governed at the member level by there are a number of letter committees. And we added that committee, the H committee, to cover innovation and technology. That was a signal of how important we found it.
Yeah.
There was an ongoing and really intentional mm-hmm. move to make sure that everybody, not just the people on staff who may already have understood this, mm-hmm. but directors, and of course superintendents, the chief regulators, commissioners, people who may not necessarily be aware of what technology does, can understand the breadth of what is available,
right.
and thus the need to ensure that it's available.
Yeah.
And that has helped us move along. So given, for instance, the model bulletin, which more than, I think the last 24 states have adopted it
Right.
in whole, and another 4 or 5 pretty much the same thing. And if you know the NAIC, it's, within a year, that's an incredible
Sure,
speed.
absolutely.
Yeah, but that is a reflection of how we as regulators see the importance of innovation, see the importance of technology adoption and improvement. And I think that has communicating that to our stakeholders, including industry, has enabled industry to say we have a certain sense of safety and security going forward.
Got it. That makes a ton of sense. Continuing the thread, Commissioner, on the concept of innovation, one of the areas that we're seeing an incredible amount of innovation is particularly in the delegated underwriting authority entity space, and we see how fast that space is growing. What does regulation look like in that space in particular?
That's why our bulletin is principles based.
Okay.
All right. You go back to the idea. I mean, there are those basic overarching principles. It's got to be fair and ethical, accountable, transparent, safe and secure. It's got to comply with all the applicable laws. There has to be a human in the loop. There has to be governance.
Right.
And for us, certainly for us in Connecticut, but I think nationally, governance is of prime importance. Now, what does that mean in real terms? It means you have to be able to explain what you're doing and why to Mr. and Mrs. consumers sitting at home, who, the most they know about the technology is that the cable company doesn't work for them.
Right.
You've got to be able to share that. At a certain point, the high-level descriptions, that this is what we're doing, that really won't cut it with them.
Right.
What people need to understand is, okay, this is how we're doing it.
Right.
This is why we're doing it. And these are the steps that we are taking to ensure that this is fair.
Got it.
If we're going to use your data, we're going to tell you about it. If we're going to make a decision based on that data, we're going to tell you how we made that decision. There's always going to be that human in the loop to address it. And if you have a problem, you can complain, you can come to us, and if you get turned down for some reason, you can appeal. That's the kind of, again, going back to the idea of building trust, because the one thing we do not want is to have that black box.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing we can do, give consumers access, help consumers understand what we are doing. And I say we advisedly, because, regulators, we're the ones that are saying you can do this.
Yep.
Okay, and there's a reason for that, and it's because we think the outcome is good. There are other ancillary, as I mentioned, data privacy, security, third-party management, third-party risk is always huge. As regulators, we have to, and we have been looking at what do we do, because for many insurance companies, much of the AI, whether it's underwriting, they tend to outsource it. It's not your core competency, so you're going to outsource it. And while under the laws that most of us, certainly those of us in the U.S. operate under, they're responsible. However, at what point do we say that we are going to go beyond that, like we do with the rating agencies, for instance, and we go to see them directly, make sure they understand that there are rules they have to follow no matter what.
So you talk a little bit about trust, Commissioner, and one of the things that occurs to me, whether it's been the industry's response to wildfires and catastrophes, especially in hurricane-prone zones, the United Health CEO, those types of things. Our industry we just have a black eye and we're not doing well. I think about other industries and how well they advocate for themselves with marketing dollars and just imagery. What more can we be doing as an industry as a whole? Not just, I'm obviously not putting this on the commissioners, but just as an industry, what's your perspective on it?
Well, it is part of what we all have to do. I'm going to give you there are a couple of things. I was at insurtech Vegas walking through and I saw a product. And the insurance company that I have, they get a high value, and they give you these things that help you. And I told the guy how great it was.
Right.
You know what that was? That was a touch point, that reinforcement. It wasn't just something negative, which is what happens with most people in insurance companies.
Right.
You pay and you pay and you pay, and you don't really understand that what you're paying for is a protection that you're getting, whether it's every month or every year. So you look at that as a waste until something happens.
Right.
If it goes great, you're happy,
Yep.
but you expect it, so
Right.
big deal. If it doesn't, you're going to complain to everybody you know.
Exactly.
Right. So what does the industry need to do? This is something that certainly, when I was president of the NAIC last year, and the NAIC is ongoing, we wanted to confront the fact that we are not properly educating consumers.
Yeah.
It doesn't just start, I mean, it's not just consumers. It starts with the little kids.
Sure.
You know, the kids in school, except in my own state, it was only a few years ago that we required financial literacy.
Sure.
And we had to push to get insurance in there so they understood the value. We need to be able to convey to consumers how important insurance is. And I know organizations, because last year when I was president, spoke to organizations like the ACLI, APCIA, the big trade associations, who agreed. And they're trying to take the same measures. It's not going to be easy.
Right.
Because we know we're dealing with, you've got to reverse essentially a lifetime.
That's right.
Of, and it's not, you're not going to do it overnight. But we have to start doing that. We have to make sure that people understand the importance of this industry and the good this industry does.
Yep. No, I couldn't agree more, Commissioner. That's awesome. I'll wrap up with this question here. Take a pivot here. Talk a little bit about leadership. You talked at the onset a lot about kind of when you talk to the young people about the industry, et cetera, and mentoring in this industry is something that's a passion of mine as well. How do you think we're doing in terms of the succession? Kind of looking at that lineage of professionals that are coming up behind. Are we ready? Are we ready to change the guard? Does it feel like we're?
I don't know if we're ready.
Yeah.
But that's partly because of the numbers that we need.
Yeah.
This is an industry that tends to be cyclical. You got a whole bunch of people who came in retiring at the same time. But I also think if we compare this industry now to what it was 20 years ago when I was going through, similar halls, it's made tremendous progress, and it will continue to make progress. We've seen outreach, certainly in my own state. It is not just, we've got our own department that's doing outreach to young people, to pretty much, who would not have otherwise been touched, to let them know, hey, just because your father doesn't go to the country club or your mother doesn't, there's insurance is a real possibility, and this is what you can do. Companies are doing that, increasing number of internships, increasing outreach, and I think it is positioning the industry well. Bottom line is you're always going to be fighting for talent.
Right.
And there is that almost negative stereotype that you got to overcome.
That's right.
You go up at the cocktail party, you start talking about insurance.
That's right.
And, oh yeah, I hear my mother calling me. But
exactly.
we got to keep going.
Yep.
And I think we've been doing a much better job than the industry has been given credit for. The industry for a long time knew how to sell products, didn't know how to sell itself.
Yeah.
Now the industry has to keep selling itself in order to provide the young people, the next generation.
Sure.
And in essence, they're the consumers, they're the ones you want working for you, to provide them with that positive feeling, to let them know, we want you. This is a place where you can feel at home, where you can grow, where you can build a career and a life.
That's awesome. I love it. Perfect. Commissioner Andrew Mais, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day for this, and look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Good seeing you.
Thank you for joining this episode of 5 Minutes. If you've enjoyed our discussion, we'd love for you to share it with anyone else you think might find it interesting. Also, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening on and hit that bell to stay on top of the game with our practical 5-minute episodes. We look forward to seeing you again next week.